All right, we are ready for our test on Unit 8, which is quadratics, and I would like to just go through the video and show you the solutions to both the test review that we do together, the one that I had hoped to have enough time in class to do together, and we only got part way through that. I have all of the solutions to that one, so what I'll do is I'll show them to you. Then we'll do the part of the test review that you were supposed to do on your own, and I will actually work out the problems. All right. These are the solutions to the together part of the test review. I quietly worked these in class. If you need to pause the video to stop, to check, to take your time, please feel free to hit the pause button and come back and check and look at that. And this is actually the first 10. So these are the solutions to the first 10 on the part of the test review that we do together. All right, I think there were 15 or 16, 15, 16 items on this page. Number 11, 12, 13 say solve. Here's all of the work to solve. When it says solve, that means you're looking for an answer for x. There's always a possibility of 2 answers for x. Number 14 asks for the y-intercept. That's always the constant c value that's at the end of the standard form of a quadratic equation. Notice that we've written it in point form, like a coordinate point. That's the x-coordinate and that's the y-coordinate. Of course, the y is -6, and we do not move off of the axis at all. So we're still right on the y-axis. That's why the x-coordinate is 0. Our x-intercepts means that we're going to set the equation equal to y and solve. My answer turned out to be 1, and the second part turned out to be exactly the same. So since it was exactly the same, then we really only have one x-intercept, so that's at x equals 1. So of course, when we do that, the x value is a 1 and the y value is 0. That is the x-intercept. And then the x-intercepts are the same as solutions, which are the same as zeros, which are the same as roots. All of these refer to the point where these are points where the parabola crosses the x-axis. Usually what this means is if you see something that says find the solutions, that means you're going to set equal to 0. You're going to factor, okay, either in with a GCF in one set of parentheses, or you're going to factor into 2 sets, okay. You're going to split the factors. You're going to set each factor equal to 0, and you're going to solve by setting it and finding the value for x. So this would be like the steps that you would have to do to get the answer when it says find the solutions, or find the x-intercepts, or find the zeros, or find the roots. You're going to have to go through these ideas of set it equal to 0, factor it, split, set each equal to 0, or solve. Okay. All right. That was the part of the review that we do together. Now let's take a look at the part of the review that you had to work out on your own. Okay. This is the test review that you were working on your own. Let me just go through and show you the answer key. These are the answer key, and then I will actually work them out on the video so that you can walk through it with me. And if you ever see a point when you have a problem, you can watch it be completed online. If you just need to check answers, then you can check answers. So I'll just show you the answers first. Again, if you get to a part and you think I'm sliding the video too fast, pause it, look at it, get what you need from it. All right, this is the second page. There's 13 through 16. And then here's 17 through 20. Those are the answers. Again, if you just need to check, that's fine. If you'd like to see it worked out, you can just fast forward a little bit. And then here's 21 through 25. And then all the way from 25 continuing to 28. So this is all of the answers to both the test review that we work together and the test review that you're going to work on your own. Okay, I'm just going to work these out. So in the first, number 1, this is the on your own part of the test review. And I wanted to give everybody the best possible chance to do well on the test. Because maybe we didn't have the class time we needed, or we didn't get to the answer to the question you had, maybe I can do something here to help. Okay, number one, I see a binomial times a binomial. I'm going to multiply. Don't forget to add your exponents, okay? 3 times 6 is 18. X to the first and x to the first, that's the mama rule. You add those exponents, you get x to the second. 3x times negative 2 is negative 6x. Then I'm going to multiply positive 7 times 6x and get positive 42x. Then positive 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. Like terms are in the center. Final answer to this one would be 18. X squared, positive 36. X minus 14. All right. Next one, x times x. Don't forget to add your exponents. That would be x to the second. When you have an x and a number together, you just bring both of them together. So negative 3x plus 3 with x, and then 3 and negative 3 multiply, so you have negative 9. My middle terms do something here. They cancel out. So I end up with an x squared minus 9, which actually is one of those special cases where we have squares. Now we're doing the opposite of multiplying. When it says to factor, factoring means divide. So it's like I'm dividing this out back to something that I might have done in the beginning. Okay? So first of all, I'm going to look for a number. 14 and 7. 7 goes into both. Then I'm looking for the most of each x they have in common. I can factor out. They both have x and x2, but they both have at least one x. They both don't have two x's. y3 and y, I can factor out a y because they have a y in common. They only have one y in common that they both have. One has more than one, but they both have at least one. Z1 and Z4, I can take out a z. Now I'm going to ask you to build your frame. So if you have two parts here, you're going to have two parts here. Usually the sign stays the same unless you factor out a negative. Then I'm going to ask you to do ds, ds. You're going to divide and subtract. So divide out 7xyz, divide out 7xyz, and what's left goes here, and what's left goes here after you divide. So 7 divides into 14 two times. X is completely canceled. Y to the third second, so y to the third minus y leaves me y to the second, and the z completely cancels. So z's cancel, x's cancel, and I subtract exponents. 7 divides 7, so it's going to be 1. And x's cancel out one of the x's, but one's left. Y completely canceled, and then if I subtract a z from z to the fourth, I end up with z to the third. So that looks a little messy. If I can rewrite it, 7xyz is a greatest common factor. 2y squared minus x z to the third would be the final complete answer. That is just straight up greatest common factor. This is not, what's left is not a perfect square. It's not a special factoring case. It cannot factor anymore. Number 4, if I look closely, I recognize 9 and 25 as being both squares with a difference in between them. So that's a difference of two squares. If I try to break down 9x, I get 3x times 3x, and for 25, I get 5 times 5. 3x goes in the front, 3x goes in the front, 5 and 5, 1 minus, 1 plus. Okay, this is a trinomial. I know I can factor trinomials. They start off as a pattern with x in the front. Then I have to think about the x puzzle. That was one of the strategies that we learned. I know if the last term is negative, it's negative 35. I know I'm going to multiply to try to get this number. I'm going to grab the 2, and that goes here, positive 2, and I know I'm going to try to add to get 2. The way the x puzzle works is you're trying to find combinations that multiply to give me negative 35, but add to give me positive 2. I know if it's negative, it's going to have to be a positive, one's going to have to be a negative. Think of all the factors of 35 as 1 times 35. 2 doesn't, 3 doesn't, 4 doesn't, 5 times 7, and I think that's it. I believe I need 5 and 7. I know there's going to be a positive and a negative, so the positive number needs to match the sign of the middle term. That's positive 2, so I need positive 7 and negative 5. Those are the numbers that I use to fill in my puzzle or my factors. Positive 7 goes here, So it was x minus 5 and x plus 7. I will remind you, you can always do the check step. To check, do inners and do outers, and then combine them. Okay? Inners, I get negative 5x. Outers, x and 7, I get positive 7x, and sure enough, when I combine those, I end up with positive 2x, which matches my middle term. So you can always do a check step to make sure that the middle term is correct. Okay, number 6 is a trinomial. What multiplies to give 9, that adds to give 10, or adds to give, yes, 9 goes on top, 10 goes on the bottom. I believe that's 1 times 9 is 9, and 1 plus 9, or 10, 1 plus 9 is 10. All right, if you do the check step, inners, outers, 1x, 9x, sure enough, 10x, it checks. Check step's important. I'm noticing here that all of these are bigger numbers, and they have 9 and 9 and 180. I believe I can factor out the GCF first. So we're going to factor a GCF out first. What that does is that will give me a chance to work with numbers that are much smaller. I believe I can divide a 9. I'm going to build my frame. 1, 2, 3 terms matches 1, 2, 3 terms here. The signs are going to be the same because I'm just taking out a positive 9. Remember, you're going to divide out the 9. So every number should be 9 times smaller. 9 divided by 9 is 1, but x squared is still there. 9 divided by 9 is 1, but x is still there. 9 goes into 180 20 times, and it's negative 20. Now, this trinomial can be factored again. So 9 in the front, 2 sets of parentheses. What multiplies to give negative 20 that's going to add to be positive 1? There's a lot of factors of 20. 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5, and I think that's it. When the last term is negative, I'm actually mentally subtracting. So 5 and 4 are the numbers I want. I need a positive and a negative. So the middle term is a positive 1, so the bigger number 5 needs to be positive, which makes 4 my negative. So it's going to be minus 4 and plus 5. And of course, I can't forget x and x. I do need to make sure I carry my 9 down, so this is now completely factored as far as you can factor. That is what we call factoring completely. So that one is completely factored. All right, number 8 says solve. Anytime I see solve, I think set it equal to 0, do some things to it. All right, so what I have here is, first of all, I'm going to look for GCF. Okay, I believe I can divide a 3, and I believe they both have the same letter x. So 3x is my GCF. I know when I do GCF factoring, it's always one big set of parentheses, 2 parts here, so 2 parts here with a plus in the middle. It still says equals 0. Now I'm going to divide and subtract, just like I'm dividing out a 3 and an x, dividing out a 3 and taking away an x. It's ds. Divide the big numbers, subtract the little numbers. X from x squared is x. The x is completely canceled, but 9 divided by 3 is 3. So we have factored it as much as we can. GCF is as far as we can go. There's nothing else I can do to factor. Now I'm to the point where I want to split, set each equal to 0, and solve for possibly 2 answers. I'm going to split right in front of the parentheses, because what that does is that splits the first term, and the second term is my 2 factors. Those are the 2 parts that are multiplied to give an answer equals 0. So either 3x, set that one equal to 0, and even when you divide by 3, a 0 divided by 3 is still 0. 0 is definitely one of my answers. Set each equal to 0, so now I'm going to take x plus 3, set that equal to 0, and I can't forget I have to subtract 3 to get x by itself. Now, don't forget, what looks like it's positive in the parentheses does come out as negative when it's solved. Okay, when it's solved. This parabola touches at negative 3 and 0, and looks like it turns up, so it would be something like that. All right, this one says, what are the x-intercepts of, and there we go, what are the x-intercepts Again, x-intercepts, one of those things. I know I need to solve for x. I know I'm going to have to set it equal to 0 because that's the strategy. When I see that x-intercepts, I know it's the same as solving. I know it's the same as roots. I know it's the same as solutions. So set it equal to 0. So 0 equals 3x squared minus 33x plus 54. These numbers all look big, and I happen to notice a factor of 3. And if I double check with my calculator, 3 goes into 33. 3 also goes into 54. So I'm going to factor out a 3. Still says equals 0. GCF factoring first. So my GCF is just a 3. They do not all have x, so I cannot factor out x. And I'm going to do ds, build my frame. 3 goes into x squared. It's like dividing out 3. X squared is left. Dividing out 3, 11 is left, and the x is left. Dividing by 3 is 18. Dividing by 3 is 18. So I have 18. All right. Now I'm at a point where I still have to solve, so I'm going to keep factoring, bring down the 3. This is now a trinomial. It will factor into 2 sets of parentheses. I'm trying to figure out what multiplies to give 18, and when the last term is positive, I'm mentally adding to get 11. And not only 11, but negative 11. So it's 1 times 18, 2 goes into it 9 times, 3 goes into it 6 times. Which combinations would add to be 11? Definitely 2 and 9. But it has to add to be negative 11, so I need a negative 2 and a negative 9, minus 2, minus 9. Now I'm at the point where I have to split, set each equal to 0, and solve. It's a little bit of work, but you can do it. X minus 2 equals 0. X minus 9 equals 0. My answer is positive 2 and positive 9. Remember, they come out of the parenthesis opposite. Now we're trying to solve or find the area of the shaded region of the box. Okay, this is where we realize that the area of the big box is something, the area of the small box, and we realize if we can take this away, we would know how much is left, like in the rectangular donut shaped thing. So area of the big, we'll multiply. Looks like it's 2x times x plus 6. So I don't have to lobster claw, I just have one term here. 2x, so 2x times x is 2. Don't forget, add exponents, 2x squared. 2x times 6 is 12x. That is the area of my big rectangle. My small rectangle is just x times x plus 1. I don't really need those parentheses in the front, but x multiplied times x, don't forget to add your exponents, is x squared. X times 1 is plus x. Now, to find what's in the shaded region, the area of what's shaded would be the area of the whole big one minus the area of the small one. And when I subtract, I'm going to subtract an expression away from an expression. So if I take 2x squares, 2x squares minus x squared, okay, remember I'm going to change the sign of this, and that's going to make that negative. All right, don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I originally had subtract right here, and I'm going to actually change the subtract to a plus, but what used to be positive is now going to be negative and negative, because up here it was positive, positive. All right, so now it's actually 2x squared minus x squared, which is 1x squared. 12x squared minus x, or excuse me, 12x minus x is going to be positive 11x. The area of the shaded box is 1x squared plus 11x. All right, let's move on. What are the roots of? Again, when it says roots, there's a clue there. Roots is the same as solutions, which is the same as x-intercepts. That means I'm going to have to set it equal to 0 and solve. So I'm going to set this equal to 0, which means I'm going to, get ahead of myself. The equals is in the wrong place. Okay, I can't just randomly do that. I already have an equals, so I'm going to add x to this side and add 8x to this side. I'm going to add 15 to this side, which means I'm going to have to add 15 to this side. So now I have nothing left over here but 0. On the left, when I pull all that together, it's x squared, positive 8x, and positive 15. Now, if I factor, what multiplies to give me 15 that adds to be 8 is 5 and 3. And they're going to add to be positive 8. So if I do that check step, that's positive 5 with x on the inside, positive 3 with x on the outside. Sure enough, it matches the term. Now remember, that's not finished. You've got to set each one equal. So if I take x plus 5, set it equal to 0, and x plus 3 and set it equal to 0, my answer is actually going to be negative 5 and negative 3, which makes C the best choice. Be cautious. Make sure you go the extra step of solving. All right, what are the zeros? Now this time I'm going to double check. This one already says equals 0, so I don't have to do anything. And notice that they've used the number or word phrase zeros. It's already said equal to 0. If I'm looking closely, this is a square. 9 is 3 times 3. This is also a square. It's 5 times 5. So I can actually factor this down into 2 sets of parentheses, 3 and x, 5 and 5, 1 positive, 1 negative. Don't forget to change the signs. So if you take 3x plus 5, set it equals 0, you're going to have to subtract 5 from both sides. Then you're going to have to divide by 3. Divide by positive 3. That makes the answer 5 over 3. That makes this answer is going to be what? Positive 5 over 3. So I have a positive 5/3 and a negative 5/3 from this one. It should have been negative. So that would be not negative, negative, but positive and negative right here. 5/3 and negative 5/3. Okay, 13. I tend to write a little big. This one has saying solutions, so they're trying to make sure that we see all of the possible words. Solutions, but this time it says what is the sum of the solutions. So I got to make sure I read that carefully. So I not only have to solve, then I got to go ahead and add my 2 in it, and I might add my 2 solutions. So I'm going to figure out what multiplies to give negative 20. That's going to add to give me 19. Now remember, the last term is negative. You're mentally subtracting to get the middle number. So 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5. Which pair mentally subtract to give me 19? It's 1 and 20. Okay. Now, which one's positive, which one's negative? The 19 is positive, so the bigger factor needs to match that. So this needs to be positive, which makes 1 the negative. So if I factor this, it's x minus 1. That's x positive 20 equal to 0. And then when I solve it, and when you split and solve, x minus 1 equals 0, x should equal a positive 1. And when x plus 20 is set equal to 0, x should equal what? A negative 20. So which one has a positive and a negative? And then I have to sum them. What is 1 plus negative 20? Negative 19. Negative 19 is choice A. Choice A is the answer. All right, now that we know that one's A, number 14. Which direction does the graph of the parabola open for y equals negative 8x squared plus 6x plus 14? If I just know what to look for, I'm looking for the sign of the x squared term. The sign of x squared is negative. So negative means it turns what? It turns down. Okay, it turns down. And we only have up and down, so we should have actually mentally crossed left and right off of our choices in the beginning. Factor x squared minus 14 plus 49. It's asking me for 2 parentheses, so I don't have to set it equal. I'm not solving. I'm just breaking it down. So I'm going to break this down. I'm going to kind of work down here. I know it can be x and x, and I'm actually going to do my x puzzle. What multiplies to give 49 that adds to give negative 14? Well, 1 times 49 and 7 times 7 is the same thing. Last term is positive, so I know I'm going to add. So 7 and 7 is 14, but to add to be negative means I add a negative 7 and a negative 7. So it's going to be minus 7 minus 7. Make sure you find the one that says negative, negative, or subtract 7, subtract 7. and we're good to go. 16, which is the graph of the function x squared minus 2x minus 8? Okay, I notice I've got one that turns up, this one turns up, this one turns up, this one turns up, and this one turns what? Bam. Well, my x squared term is positive, so that means this one turns up. Right away, I can cross out D. Next, I know it actually touch the y-intercept is always the C number. So my y-intercept is at -8. So this one touches at -8, and this one touches at -8, and this one does not touch at -8. So I've narrowed my choices to A and B. What I need to do now is I have to get my x-intercepts, which means in order to get x-intercepts, that's one of the 4 words. It means I have to solve it. So I'm going to set it equal to 0, x squared minus 2x minus 8. What multiplies to give me -8 that's going to add to give me -2? Well, 1 times 8 and 2 times 4 are my only ones. The last term is negative, so I'm mentally subtracting. So I know it's going to be 2 and 4. It's no surprise. Got to make sure I get this right. The middle term is a negative, so because it's negative, I need my bigger factor to be negative. So it would be -4, that's going to be +2. And of course, I should have had x and x in there already. How can you know if that's right? Do the check step. 2x, -4x, and sure enough, when I combine those, I get -2x. So I know those are right, but I have to finish solving. So if I make this a clean slate right here, and I split down the middle and pull this out, remember, set each equal to 0, -2, and that was minus, x minus 4, set that equal to 0, x is +4. So I need -2 and +4, -2, +4. I believe B is correct because these two are in the wrong places. So make sure you go that extra step and solve so that you get the right answer. 17, what are the solutions of? Solutions means you got to set it equal to 0 and solve. So first thing I got to do is get rid of 11. So I'm going to subtract 11 away. X squared minus 7 plus 7x. That'd be minus 18 when I combine like terms to 0. What multiplies to give me 18? It's going to mentally subtract to give me 7. So it's +7. So I'm thinking 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6, 2 and 9. It's got to be 2 and 9. The middle term matches the bigger number. So my bigger number needs to be positive. It means 2 needs to be negative. Now, that's what I get when I go to parentheses, x minus 2 and x plus 9. Again, that's equal to 0, but I have to split and solve. X minus 2 equals 0, x plus 9 equals 0. My two answers turn out to change signs. That's +2, and x turns out to be -9. +2 and -9, choice B. That's how we got B. What the expression is equal to? I actually just need to multiply this one. So I just need to remember that that's like 2 parentheses just alike. X times x equals x squared, +8x. This is also another +8x. And that's +64. So I believe I get x squared plus 16x plus 64. Plus 16x plus 64. Plus 16x. That's it. B is correct. Which expression is a factor? It means I need to factor this and then figure out which one of these is in my parentheses. Chances are there's not going to be any of these in my parentheses but one. So C and C, I can do that one. Now I'm figuring out what multiplies give me -16. It's going to add to give me 6. So 1 times 16, 2 times 8, 3 times, nope, 3 doesn't go into 16, 4 times 4. Okay, the last term's negative, mentally subtracting. I believe 2 and 8 are the numbers I need. Got to make sure I get the sign right. All right. Well, the middle term is positive, so my bigger number needs to be positive, which means 2 is going to be negative. So it must be going to be C minus 2 and plus 8. All right. C minus 8 is not there. C plus 8 is there. C minus 6 is not there. And C plus 2 is the wrong one. Okay. That's the only one. C plus 8 was one of the 2 parentheses. Factor completely. So I'm going to take -10x squared plus 90. I don't like the x squared being negative. I need it to be positive x squared. So this time I'm actually going to factor out the negative and the 10 at the same time. So it's kind of like I'm going to divide by negative 10 and divide by negative 10. Negative divided by negative positive, and x squared is left. 90 divided by negative 10 is negative 9. Now if I look closely at what I have left, notice it says completely. I'm going to check to see, can I factor that again? Turns out these are what? Squares. This is x times x. I believe that's 3 times 3. So I'm looking for two sets of parentheses, x minus 3, x plus 3, with negative 10 in the front. And I believe that matches choice C. Let's keep going. 21, find the roots. Ding, 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 roots. That means you got to set it equal to 0 and solve. First thing I got to do is make it set equal to 0, so I'm going to subtract 6. If I do, I get x squared minus 16 is equal to 0. Those have squares. It's x times x and 4 times 4. Got to recognize those squares. Parentheses, parentheses, x minus 4, x plus 4. When they come out, I believe I get a positive 4 and a negative 4. The following graph shows which of the function. Well, for one thing, let's just make observations. Turn up or turn down? This one's turning down, which means that the x squared term needs to be what? Negative. So I need a negative in front. Which one of these have a negative in front? A does and B does. It means C is out and D is out. I can cross those out. The next thing is I want to look at the y-intercept. What is the y-intercept? Well, from the center, I'm going to count down 1, down 2. So the y-intercept looks like negative 2. Which one of these has a y-intercept of negative 2? I believe that's A. That narrowed my choices. It's not positive 2, so that took out that one. So just methodically remember your parts and what the meaning are and figure it out. Which of the following is equal to? And I'm noticing my answers are all parentheses. So being as that's the case, I just need a factor. X puzzle, negative 21, negative 4. 1 times 21, 3 times 7. The last term's negative. I'm going to mentally subtract, so I need a 7 and a 3. Just to get the signs right, bigger number matches the sign of the middle term, so the 7 needs to be negative and the 3 is going to be positive. So x and x plus 3 minus 7. If you want to check the middle term, this is the way to do it. Sure enough, I get negative 4x, which is the middle term. So it's plus 3 minus 7, plus 3 minus 7 is choice C. 24. Write it in factored form. I believe this one's going to factor a couple of times, since I'm noticing all of these have a GCF out front. So I know at least a 4 comes out. And if I look, x to the third, x to the second, x. They all have at least one x. So now if I'm going to divide by 4 and subtract exponents. Remember DSDS. Divide my numbers, subtract my exponents. So if I divide, I get x squared. Divide, I get 3. Subtract an x, I get an x. Divide, I get 4, and there's no x left. Now, I'm a little short on space. Bring my 4x down. Right away, I know 4 and x. So I know I can cross out choice A, and I know I can cross out choice D. Trying to figure out what's going to multiply to give negative 4, and it's going to add to be negative 3. Well, it's only 1 times 4, because 2 times 2 won't work. The sign of the middle term matches the sign of the bigger number, so I need a negative 4, and I need a positive 1. Negative 4, positive 1. I believe we've narrowed it to B. For letter C is not completely factored. So that's why C is not a good answer. All right, we're in the home stretch. Number 25, factor. So the following. Well, I only have 2 terms. So first thing I always check for, first always try for GCF. And I believe this one's definitely going to be a GCF. What number goes into 8 and 10 at the same time? Okay. Looks like it's going to be 2. And because the first one happens to be negative, we're going to factor out a negative 2. Okay? Most of these have negative 2s. I'm probably going to say 8 is not right because it can't factor out an 8. And D is not right because you can factor out a number. So that narrows me down to B and C. So I know I'm going to factor out the negative with the 2. All right, they both have an A and they both have 2 A's. So let's take them both away. They both have at least one B. So that's what I'm going to do. Build my frame. Divide and subtract. Negative divided by negative is positive. The A's completely cancel, so I get no A's. But I do have B to the second. So that's just positive B to the second. All right. Negative 2 divides into positive 10, negative 5 times. A squared from A squared is no A's, and B from B is no B's. That's it, guys. B squared minus 5. Oh, sorry. 2 goes into 8 4 times. I almost overlooked that. 4b squared minus 5. My bad. All right. Back to the following. GCF first. Okay. What number? Actually, they don't have a number in common because they're squares. But I do have an x in common. So let's try to get rid of that x. I'm going to pull one x away. So basically, you're going to pull one x away and write everything that's left. So if I take one x away, I'm down to x2. If I take one x away, I just have 25. Now I end up with squares. So this one actually factors twice. Okay, so I keep my x out front. That's going to break down into 4x and 4x. That's going to break down into 5 and 5. And one is positive and one is negative. So x out front means this one's not it, this one's not it, and that's not it. Here we go. D is it. Find the zeros. What does zeros mean? Set it equal to 0 and solve. So 0 equals negative 8x squared plus 16x. All right, I'm going to factor out the greatest common factor, so GCF. I don't like having that negative in the front, so I'm going to factor out a negative 8. I got 2 parts inside parentheses. Divide, and they both have an x. I'm not looking for that close enough. I should have. They both have an x, so I can factor out an x and divide out negative 8. Remember your ds. Divide the big numbers, subtract the little exponents. So it's like dividing by negative 8 and an x, dividing by negative 8 and an x. What's left goes here. It's going to be positive x. That's actually going to change to negative 2. Now I'm not finished because it says to solve. So that means I got to split, set each equal to 0, and find 2 possible answers. So let's set negative 8x equal to 0. Even if you divide by negative 8, you find out x is just a 0. So one of the answers is 0. I know A is not right, and I know C is not right. The next parenthesis has x minus 2. Set that equal to 0, and we know the second answer is positive 2. Now I know my answer is 0 and positive 2. Last one, let's drive it home. Let's get ourselves ready so we can knock this quiz tomorrow, knock this test tomorrow. All right. First thing I'm going to do is see if I can factor GCF. Always look for GCF first. Looks like they can all be divided by 2, but that's it. 2 is the only thing I can divide. So I'm going to divide out of 2, divide out of 2, and divide out of 2, and write what's left in my frame. All right, if I divide out of 2, the 2's cancel, and I have just x squared left. Here, 2 divides into 10, and that's going to be positive 5, and an x is still there. And then the 72 divided by 2 is 36. I believe this part factors again because I noticed that everything goes to 2 sets of parentheses. Bring down my 2. And every one of them has a 2. Actually, I think I can cross out choice A. All right, negative 36. The middle term has to be 5. What multiplies to give 36 is 1 times 36, 2 and 18, and 3 times 12, and 4 times 9, and 6 times 6. There's a lot of factors of 36. Okay, when the last term is negative, we're mentally subtracting to get 5. So that tells me 4 and 9 are the numbers I need. So if I need 4 and 9, the bigger number matches the sign of the middle term. That's a positive 5, so 9 is going to be positive, which means 4 has got to be negative. So minus 4 plus 9. Minus 4 plus 9. That's got the signs backwards. Minus 4 plus 9. That's got them negative, negative. Okay, that concludes me discussing or working out and solving the entire study guide. I wish we'd had more chance, more productive time in class. This is the next best thing I can do for you. Good luck tomorrow.